This is not a castle in France. This is a single-family, 8-bedroom, 12-bathroom home in South Lake, Texas. It was one of the 14 million homes we completed in this window of time, right before the U.S. housing market took a major hit and then never fully recovered, which at this point you've probably heard too much about. But the focus of this video isn't on the homes we aren't building. It's on the ones we are building and why so many of them look like this now. In the last century, the median home size in America has gradually increased. Most new single families are constructed with at least 3 bedrooms, which means they're way out of budget for most Americans. And yet, most Americans are living with fewer people, which means we're paying a lot more for extra space we don't technically need. And so is Barbie, whose dream house costs $2.7 million more than it did in 1962. What created this paradox of bigger houses for smaller households? And why is it still a thing when so many of us are actually looking to downsize? To find out, I had to rebuild any previous knowledge I had of the multi-billion-dollar construction industry. The process required going line by line to uncover what's really driving the trend of big houses in America. If you're a first-time homebuyer, the answer may infuriate you. But the good news is there's plenty of disruption and innovation happening in the market. Like this startup that's reimagining the single-family home like a set of Legos. But is building smaller actually better?
If somebody wants to come and buy one today, I gotta say, oh, sorry, I can't sell it to you.
Yet another housing problem to unpack. So I'm on a walk right now in a neighborhood in LA. I feel kind of weird about filming people's houses directly, but I just walked past something that I have to show you. Check this out. A roughly 700 square foot home sandwiched in between 2 homes that are both more than 3,000 square feet. Yes, real estate in LA is known to be a little bit flashy, but bigger homes aren't just an LA trend. Roughly 2,700 miles away in a New Jersey suburb, it's a similar situation. Single-family homes in the US have been on a growth spurt since the 1950s. See, we used to have this thing called the starter home, which has effectively disappeared in the US. The starter home was designed and priced affordably and marketed first-time, predominantly white homebuyers who filled it with an average of 3 to 4 kids. Not long after the first starter homes were built, the total number of new homes we were building skyrocketed thanks in part to the founding of national construction companies like Lennar.
In 2023, just one company, Lennar, built 47% of all new single-family homes in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Pompano Beach area.
That's a clip from my colleague Karen Shedd's video on the real reason you can't buy a house. As you can see, Lennar and its counterparts still dominate in the biggest home building markets nationwide, even though they aren't really building that many new houses. It was a different story back in the 1970s. I mean, look at how many new homes we built in that decade alone. But also, look at how much bigger they were getting. And check this out. This is the exact point at which the paradox of more space for fewer people really starts to take effect. But why the 1970s? Let's quickly pretend you're a first-time homebuyer in 1972. Chances are you grew up in one of those original starter homes from the 40s and 50s, and now you want more space to entertain and comfortably raise a family of your own. You're in luck. Because homes are now starting to be viewed not just as places to live, but as financial assets. So buying something bigger equals a better investment. Plus, banks are enacting new credit policies, which allows you to borrow more money to invest in a bigger home. And thanks to mass production, building materials have become cheaper. So builders can now focus more on quantity of rooms versus quality of construction. The 1970s laid the foundation for median home sizes in the US to balloon in the decades that followed. And that's no more evident than in the evolution of Barbie's dream house. This is what the original house looked like in 1962. There's not even a kitchen. It got a little bigger in the 1970s and completely blew up in the 1990s as a reflection of the McMansion era that blended different architectural styles, a stark contrast to the 2021 house.
The clean lines and the geometric shapes, but very large and ostentatious. It reminds me of the mansions they have on Selling Sunset.
Which brings us to today. Only 9% of new housing units completed in 2023 were considered to be entry level, smaller than 1,400 square feet. Some of that has to do with local zoning laws that restrict the development of starter homes in multifamily units like apartments and condos. But there's an even bigger obstacle preventing us from constructing affordable entry-level housing, and it's hidden in the financial spreadsheets of home building companies. According to multiple reports, new homes in the US cost on average $150 to $200 per square foot to build, and the expenses start before builders even break ground. Pre-construction costs, known as finished lot cost, vary significantly based on the price of the land, which of course varies based on location. According to the National Association of Home Builders 2024 survey, the average single-family home size was roughly 2,600 square feet of finished floor space. The finished lot cost on average was $91,000. Then comes the construction cost, which breaks down into categories including site work, foundations, exterior finishes, interior finishes, and final steps. That came out to about $428,000 on average. And when you factor in the additional expenses that go into putting a house on the market, this one sold for $665,000. For the builder, that comes out to $72,000 in profit, about a 22% gross profit margin, which is largely why construction is a multi-billion-dollar industry. You may have noticed we love looking into billion-dollar industries and how they make money. So we took our most viral Hustlenomics video stories, extracted the best takeaways from each one, and put them into a quick reference deck called Hustlenomics Highlights. If you've ever wondered how all-you-can-eat buffets stay afloat, or why airlines don't need full flights to turn a profit, we have those answers plus a lot more. So you can learn the winning strategies behind some of the world's biggest and smallest businesses directly from the industry experts. Oh, and from me. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code for the full breakdown. The total sales price of the example I just shared is well above what the average US household can afford. The good news is, homebuyers now want smaller homes than they did 20 years ago, and it's starting to move the needle in terms of home sizes and also home prices. According to census data, the median square footage of new single-family units dropped to 2,100 square feet in Q1 of 2024. That's the lowest it's been since 2010. Plus, the National Home Builders Association has noticed its survey participants scaling things down in recent years, which isn't technically beneficial for them. And not just because those smaller homes sell for less money, but because they actually cost more to build. For builders, many construction costs are relatively fixed, regardless of a home's size, which means they can actually build more floor space but spend less per square foot. It's a concept in the business world known as economies of scale, where the cost to build a single-family home declines systematically as the home itself becomes larger. I should clarify, though, that this doesn't always apply to every home, especially if you're building something custom. Economically speaking, it just makes more sense for these companies to build larger, often luxury single-family homes to increase their bottom lines, especially when construction costs are on the rise. And given the current housing shortage, the market is well on their side, even though they're still taking a risk.
And if the economy takes a blow while you're building, you might not even have a buyer lined up by the time your house is complete.
So yeah, while these companies from a business standpoint are definitely incentivized to build bigger, and you can't really blame them for that, you, as the buyer, ultimately dictate what sells. And that may not necessarily be a 2,600 square foot home. Not the ideal shift for traditional home builders, but it's pretty good for startups that are building their entire business enterprise on disrupting the industry. Take Boxable, for example. The startup launched in 2017 is leveraging the smaller home trend with its factory-built single-family homes that can be folded and stacked like Legos. Its core product, the Casita, is a 361 square foot unit that starts at $50,000. And then there's the Baby Box, an even smaller unit that starts at $20K. The company has already achieved a $3.5 billion valuation thanks to customers like Elon Musk and investors like D.R. Horton, the largest home building company in the US. People clearly love the size and price of Boxable, but building smaller isn't necessarily easier.
What we're trying to do is extremely ambitious and difficult and filled with challenges, but if we figure it out, the potential impact we can have is really big, I think.
A year ago, Business Insider reported that Boxable had a massive waiting list of 175,000 customers. According to the outlet, Boxable faced a cash crunch if it couldn't secure additional financing or investments. But according to Boxable, the overwhelming demand for its tiny homes isn't the problem.
One of the biggest legitimate challenges that we face is the regulation surrounding housing. And I knew coming into this that would be an issue, but I didn't expect it to be this difficult. In response to us running out of money at the end of the year, well, the end of the year came and passed and I'm still here. There are, of course, legitimate challenges with the company and legitimate problems, but this wasn't a hard thing to do, then somebody would have done it already and we wouldn't be here.
The starter home may be a thing of the past, but smaller homes in general are most certainly in our future. Even if it takes you longer to find one, you don't have to go big to go home. Like this video, subscribe to The Hustle, and check out the full video on the real reason you can't buy a house. And get our economic insights into some of the biggest industries in the world by downloading our Hustlenomics Highlights report.